Thank you for expanding and explaining the whole process. It's dubbing is really fascinating and so different than subtitles. But I wanted to focus a little bit more, right, on the process itself, and wanted to go back to the years when you were working as a project manager, right, or quality controller. Could you tell us a bit more about that? And what I mean here is, what are the stages of a dubbing project? Which stages are the most challenging?
Hmm. So when I did this job, it was in Barcelona, and they worked a little different than we do in France, because they when I was working, they didn't have the bande rythmo, which is the, the band, which is scrolling on the screen, and where the text is written and synced with the video, like a karaoke, pretty much. So they didn't have that, so we worked on Word documents with inserting time codes to once every one sentence, two sentences, sometimes in the middle of a sentence. And the actors were trained for this. So they knew they were looking at the screen with their sheet of paper printed out, and they were able to look at the paper and be in time. So it's pretty different than in France. So at the time, if I remember correctly, we received the film, we received the script, and then we have to put it in the format that we can give then to the translator, which at the time were the word sheet, but now would be the bande rythmo. Um, then we find an adapter who's available, who's willing, who's fitting. Maybe if it's a horror movie, don't give it to someone who hates horror movies. Um, this is something that I think in project management is quite important, and in my opinion, not often enough done. Is give it to someone who is going to enjoy it, uh, and then you give the person all the information that you have, the script. Maybe now you've got more and more elements, um, localization lists, creative guidelines, show guides, etc. And then the person is going to be in touch with subtitlers if it's a program that's going to be dubbed and subtitled. This is the ideal case. I'm making the ideal because, again, it's not always done. But it's useful to be in touch with other people who are working on the same project, because you can share ideas, you can brainstorm. So this is important. And then as a dubbing adapter, you're in touch as well with the artistic director, which is the person who supervises the dubbing on set when it is being recorded. So this person is in charge of cohesion, coherence between the terms used throughout a series, if it's several episodes. If there are various authors, they need to make sure that everything is coherent. Um, then, as a project manager, you get back the translated files. At the time when I was quality control, I proofread them, and I maybe sent it back. So can you change this? There's a spelling mistake there, etc. Then you can verify it, which we didn't do back in Barcelona, but we do sometimes, not enough again, in my view, in France. So it's in a dubbing studio. You get a room, and then there's the author, the dubbing author, the artistic director, and sometimes the client. And you have to read through your whole film or whole episode, making all the roles, like acting as if you were dubbing the whole thing. So it's a very tiring process. It's usually one day. A film could be one day, and in one day you can do maybe 2, 3 episodes. So it's a very tiring process, but it's
And
nice.
it's also
Yeah,
a time-consuming process, right?
it is.
Would you say that it's normally done that authors go to the studio, read that out? Are they paid for this as well?
Well, it's something that we're currently struggling for. I was going to say we're currently asking for, because traditionally it wasn't paid. So the author sometimes came from another city to do this, and wasn't being paid, whereas the artistic director, who just had to sit and watch, was being paid. So we thought it was very unfair, and we decided to change this. And now it's more and more studios pay for this. So it's not all I'm talking Paris. What I know, the dubbing studios in Paris, more and more do pay the tariffs, but
So,
not all of them.
Abel-Antoine, what would you say is the typical turnaround, right, for such a project? Because you mentioned all the stages. So how long does it take to produce dubbing, right, to a movie or to series?
I couldn't give you a precise answer for the whole.
Of course, more or less.
Yes. So I would say, well, for adaptation, I count pretty much 10 minutes a day that I can write. It can vary, but it's pretty much. So say for a 90-minute movie, you'd count 9 working days, like for the proper writing. Then it's too short. So I would say 10 days is a minimum for a hour and a half movie. So to that you add, it starts before, because before you have to, the project manager has to prepare everything, book the artistic director. The artistic director has to book all the actors, make sure they're available, set a rec date for the recording. And then after that, you have the mixing phase. You have sometimes they do another verification afterwards, which we call a double band. You watch the dubbed version, and you can still make little adjustments of mixing. Maybe if there's an error, you can ask the actor to come back. So with all this combined, I would say maybe a month per film. But
Okay.
it's I'm not quite sure. You'd have to ask a project manager.
Now, just more or less, a month is, kind of an answer so that we understand how long does it take, right? So
It's
because
pretty long.
Yeah, so an episode of a series would be like 2 weeks, maybe a month as well, because then depending, right, on the cast and their availability, I would say
Yeah.
the times are similar. And also, if you're planning to dub a series, you usually book the actors for more than one episode, right? So it's good to work in batches, of course.
Yeah. Of course, we work in batches for series. So usually they're recording 2-3 episodes at a time, booking one comedian who's going to come back in episode 2 and 3. He does all his takes or all her takes in one session. And sometimes we as adapters have to adapt, and sometimes one comedian is not available, so we have to write his or her lines beforehand, which is not ideal, because sometimes you don't know what's going to happen in the later episodes, and you have to write the lines, and you didn't write the whole thing. So this is not ideal, but it happens sometimes, especially around the summer, where all the actors go to Festival d'Avignon, which is a theater festival in France.
Yeah, in August, nobody's available, right?
Yeah, well, this is in July, so it makes August nobody's available. July there's Festival d'Avignon, and a lot of comedians are not available, so it's usually a tight period.